The call came in at 3:17 a.m. Detective Sarah Mercer fumbled for her phone in the darkness, her eyes still heavy with sleep. Dispatch rarely called directly to her cell unless it was serious. "Mercer," she answered, her voice raspy. "Detective, we've got a situation at 1423 Oakwood Drive. Possible home invasion. Officer Davis responded to a 911 call, but we've lost contact." Sarah sat up, instantly alert. "Lost contact? For how long?" 23 minutes. Radio check was missed, then his body camera went offline. 2 additional units were dispatched but haven't reported back. Captain wants you there now. I'm on my way. The rain was coming down in sheets as Sarah pulled up to the address. 3 patrol cars were parked haphazardly in the driveway and along the curb, their light bars casting eerie blue and red patterns across the front of the modest suburban home. But there was no movement. No officers securing the perimeter. No radio chatter. Just silence. Sarah drew her service weapon and approached the first patrol car. Empty. The driver's door was ajar, the interior light illuminating the vacant seat. The radio crackled with unanswered calls from dispatch. "This is Detective Mercer at the Oakwood scene," she said into her shoulder mic. "No visual on responding officers. Proceeding to investigate." The front door of the house stood open, a dark rectangle against the pale siding. Sarah moved up the walkway, every sense heightened. The smell of rain and wet grass mixed with something else, something metallic and organic. Inside, the house was unnaturally quiet. Sarah's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a living room in disarray. Furniture overturned, a lamp shattered on the floor. Signs of a struggle, but no blood. "Police! Anyone here?" Her voice echoed through the house. Following protocol, she began a systematic search. Kitchen clear. Dining room clear. As she approached the hallway leading to the bedrooms, her flashlight caught a reflection on the hardwood floor, a small pool of liquid. Blood. And beside it, a police radio. The blood trail led to the master bedroom. The door was closed. Sarah positioned herself to the side, turned the knob, and pushed it open with her foot, weapon ready. What she saw made her stomach lurch. Officer Davis lay spread-eagled on the bed, his throat cut so deeply his head was nearly severed. His eyes were wide open, frozen in shock. His service weapon was still holstered. But it was what surrounded him that made Sarah's blood run cold. Photographs. Dozens of them, arranged in a perfect circle around the body. Crime scene photos. Autopsy images. Victims from cases she recognized, and some she didn't. Each photo marked with precise handwriting. And at the foot of the bed, propped against the wall, was a mirror. Written across it in what appeared to be Davis's blood. "You're looking in the wrong direction, Detective Mercer." Sarah spun around, her weapon raised, but the hallway behind her remained empty. She keyed her mic. "Dispatch, Officer Davis is down. I need..." The radio cut off mid-sentence, replaced by static. A sound from elsewhere in the house, a floorboard creaking under weight. Sarah moved silently back into the hallway. The other 2 officers were still unaccounted for. Following the blood trail, she found a closed door at the end of the corridor. The bathroom. She could see light seeping out from under the door. The sound of water running. "Police! Open the door!" No response. Sarah counted to 3 and pushed open the door. Officer Reyes sat slumped against the bathtub, his sidearm still clutched in his hand. A bullet wound marked his temple, the exit wound having painted the shower curtain behind him. A suicide? But his expression wasn't one of desperation, it was fear. The sink faucet ran full blast, the basin overflowing. And taped to the mirror was a photo. Sarah recognized it instantly. It was her own standard-issue department headshot, but altered. Eyes scratched out. And below it, another message. "They trusted you to see." A cold dread washed over her. Where was the 3rd officer? And where were the home's residents? The sound of static suddenly filled the house, the patrol car radios outside all activating simultaneously. Then a voice, distorted but unmistakable. Detective Mercer. Check the basement. Sarah's mouth went dry. That voice, it wasn't dispatch. It wasn't anyone from the department. But it was familiar. The basement door was in the kitchen. As she descended the wooden stairs, the beam of her flashlight played across the unfinished space, concrete floors, exposed beams, plastic storage bins stacked against the walls. And in the center of the room, Officer Bennett. He was on his knees, hands flex-cuffed behind his back. His head was bowed. Bennett? Sarah called out, approaching cautiously. Are you hurt? He didn't respond or look up. When she was 5 feet away, she noticed the wire running from beneath his uniform shirt. Don't move, Bennett, she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Is that what I think it is? Slowly, Bennett raised his head. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. He said you'd come. He managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Said you'd try to save me? Who did? Where is he? Bennett's good eye filled with tears. He said to tell you, the Gardner case. You got it wrong. The Gardner case. 3 years ago. A serial killer who targeted young women, posing their bodies in public parks. Sarah had led the investigation that put Marcus Lee behind bars. The evidence had been circumstantial but convincing. Lee had proclaimed his innocence until the end, even after his conviction. Bennett, we need to get you out of here. Is there a detonator? A timer? Bennett's laugh was hollow. You still don't see it, do you? After all this time. Sarah's mind raced, piecing it together. The photos upstairs. The messages. The voice on the radio. It wasn't Marcus Lee, she said slowly. The Gardner killings. Bennett's expression changed, a peculiar calm settling over his features. There you go. But it's too late now. For me. For you. A metallic click echoed in the basement. Not from Bennett. From behind her. Sarah began to turn, but too slowly. Hello, Detective Mercer. The voice belonged to Captain James Reynolds, her supervisor for the past 6 years. The man who had praised her work on the Gardner case. Who had pushed for Lee's conviction despite the defense's claims of evidence tampering. In his hand was a detonator. You weren't supposed to be here yet, Reynolds said conversationally, as if they were discussing a case over coffee. I had more to prepare. More for you to find. Sarah kept her gun trained on him. Why, James? All those women. Don't pretend you care about them. Reynolds snapped, his calm facade cracking. You didn't look closely enough. You saw what was convenient. What would close the case quickly. And Davis? Reyes? Casualties. Davis was starting to ask questions about old evidence. Reyes was just unfortunate. Wrong place, wrong time. Sarah's mind worked furiously. The wire on Bennett. The detonator in Reynolds' hand. She needed to keep him talking. And Marcus Lee? An innocent man? Reynolds smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Hardly innocent. But not guilty of my work. Your work? Sarah echoed, the full horror of what he was saying sinking in. My art, Reynolds corrected. Which you attributed to that amateur. Do you know how that feels? To create something profound, something that makes the world take notice, and then have someone else take credit? So this is what? Revenge? Setting the record straight? This is a correction, Reynolds said. His thumb caressed the detonator. And a new beginning. Sarah's training kicked in. James, let's talk about this. We can make it right. A sad smile crossed Reynolds' face. We're past that, Sarah. But I'm curious, when did you start to suspect? Was it tonight? Or have you had doubts all along? The question hit her like a physical blow. Because the truth was, there had been inconsistencies in the Gardner case. Details that didn't quite add up. But she'd been under pressure to close it, and Lee had a record, had known one of the victims. She'd convinced herself those doubts were just perfectionism. I should have looked harder, she admitted. But it's not too late to fix this. Let Bennett go. Turn yourself in. Tell your side. Reynolds studied her face. Always the negotiator. But you see, there's a larger plan in motion. Tonight is just one scene in a much bigger story. He took a step toward her. The house is wired, Sarah. Bennett is wired. In about 30 seconds, this place becomes a crater. But you have a choice. You can try to save Bennett, though I promise you, there's not enough time to disarm what I've set up. Or you can shoot me and try to escape yourself. There's another option, Sarah said, her voice steady. Drop the detonator. Now. Reynolds laughed. Always by the book. That's what made you so easy to manipulate all these years. You never could see the bigger picture. In that moment, Sarah made her decision. She lunged forward, not to shoot but to tackle Reynolds. They crashed to the floor, the detonator skittering away across the concrete. Reynolds was stronger than he looked. He flipped her onto her back, hands going for her throat. You don't understand what you're interfering with, he snarled. Sarah drove her knee up into his stomach and rolled, breaking his grip. She scrambled for her gun, which had fallen in the struggle. Reynolds was faster. He grabbed her ankle and pulled her back. I gave you a chance to run, he hissed. Upstairs, a loud crash, the sound of the front door being breached. Voices called out. Police! Clear! Reynolds' eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed. You called for backup. When? Sarah allowed herself a small smile. I didn't. But I did tell dispatch I was headed here when I got the call. Standard procedure. Reynolds' expression darkened. He lunged for the detonator. Sarah's hand closed around her weapon. She didn't hesitate. The gunshot was deafening in the confined space of the basement. Reynolds staggered back, a look of shock on his face as blood bloomed across his chest. How predictable! He gasped, falling to his knees. But this isn't the end. The truth is already out there. As the backup officers rushed down the stairs, Sarah knelt beside Bennett, looking for a way to free him, to disarm whatever device Reynolds had planted. It's not real, Bennett whispered. The vest. It's not real. He just wanted to see what you'd do. If you'd sacrifice me or yourself. Sarah stared at him, then quickly tore open his shirt. No explosives. Just wires leading nowhere. It had all been a test. A sick game. As the medics took Bennett away and crime scene techs descended on the house, Sarah sat in her car, the rain still drumming on the roof. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. *round 1 to you, detective. But the game is just beginning. Check your email for the rest of the story. The one you missed. *. She should report it. Hand over her phone. Tell her superiors everything. Instead, she started the car and pulled away from the scene. Whatever Reynolds had put in motion, whatever truth he claimed she'd missed, she needed to find it first. Because if the Gardner case was built on a lie, how many others were too? The rain washed over her windshield as she drove into the night, the radio silent beside her. And somewhere in the darkness, she knew someone was watching. Waiting for round 2. The body count was at 3. But Sarah had the sinking feeling it was about to get much higher. She just hoped she would see it coming this time. Sheriff Deputy Mike Landon had served Pinewood County for 15 years. In a rural community of 3,800 people spread across 5 small towns and endless farmland, he knew most residents by name. The job was largely routine, occasional domestic disputes, drunk drivers, petty theft, and teenagers causing mischief at the abandoned mill. It was the kind of place where dispatch might send him to help Mrs. Henderson's cat down from a tree, then not call again for hours. That changed the day Gerald Haas moved into the yellow house on Oak Ridge Road. The house had stood vacant for nearly a decade, a small, 2-story farmhouse on 3 acres of overgrown land at the edge of town. When Mike first noticed the sold sign, he'd felt relief. Empty properties tended to attract trouble. He'd driven by a week later and seen a tall, gaunt man in his 60s unloading boxes from a rusted station wagon. The man had waved with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Mike had waved back and continued his patrol, making a mental note to stop by and introduce himself properly when the man had settled in. That had been 2 months ago. He never made that visit. The first call came in on a Tuesday morning in late August. "Sheriff's Department, this is Deputy Landon." "Mike, it's Ellen from the general store." Ellen Mathers had owned Pinewood General for 35 years. Not much happened in town without her knowing about it. "Thought you should know about that new fella, the one in the old Crowley place." "Gerald Haas? What about him?" "He's been in here 3 times this week buying weird stuff. Duct tape, bleach, plastic sheeting. And a whole lot of it." She paused. "Wouldn't normally mention it, but he was acting strange. Talking to himself. And when I asked if he was doing renovations, he just stared at me. Gave me the willies." Mike thanked her and promised to look into it. Common home renovation supplies weren't cause for alarm, but Ellen's intuition had proven reliable over the years. Later that day, he drove out to Oak Ridge Road. The yellow house looked different than he remembered. All the windows had been covered from the inside with what appeared to be black trash bags. The overgrown yard had been meticulously mowed, the long grass replaced by bare dirt in perfect concentric circles around the house. Mike parked his cruiser and approached the front door. Before he could knock, a voice called out from inside. "I know why you're here, Deputy. I haven't done anything wrong yet." The yet made the hairs on the back of Mike's neck stand up. "Mr. Haas? I'm Deputy Landon. Just thought I'd stop by and welcome you to Pinewood." Silence, then the sound of multiple locks disengaging. The door opened just wide enough to reveal Gerald Haas, thinner than Mike remembered, with sunken eyes behind thick glasses and a patchy beard. He wore latex gloves and what looked like surgical scrubs. "I'm very busy, Deputy," Haas said, his voice surprisingly soft. "But I appreciate the courtesy call." Mike caught a glimpse of the interior behind Haas, walls covered in newspaper clippings and what appeared to be hand-drawn diagrams. A chemical smell wafted out, bleach mixed with something metallic. "Everything all right in there, Mr. Haas? Doing some cleaning?" Haas smiled thinly. "Always cleaning, Deputy. Never seems to get completely clean, though. No matter how hard I scrub." He glanced over his shoulder. "They told me this would be a quiet town. That I wouldn't be bothered. Was that incorrect information?" "No, sir. We're pretty quiet here. But we also look out for each other." Haas studied Mike's face, as if memorizing his features. "How admirable. Community spirit." He began to close the door. "If there's nothing else." "Actually," Mike said, "I was wondering about the windows. Covering them up like that can be a fire hazard." "I have insomnia," Haas replied smoothly. "The light disturbs me. But I assure you, I've taken proper fire precautions. Good day, Deputy." The door closed firmly, followed by the sound of locks engaging, more than seemed necessary for a house in Pinewood County. Mike returned to his cruiser, an uneasy feeling settling in his stomach. Nothing illegal had occurred, but something felt off. He ran Haas's name through the system when he got back to the station. The results were oddly sparse. A driver's license issued 3 years ago in Illinois, no criminal record, no property ownership before the yellow house, minimal credit history. It was as if Gerald Haas had barely existed until recently. Over the next few weeks, more reports trickled in. Haas buying unusual quantities of salt and ammonia from the hardware store. A delivery driver reporting strange sounds from the basement when dropping off packages. Teenagers claiming they'd seen Haas standing motionless in his yard at 3 a.m., staring at the stars. Then the cats started disappearing. First it was the Johnsons' Tabby, then old Mrs. Perry's Siamese. Within 2 weeks, 5 cats had vanished from homes within a mile of the yellow house. No evidence, no remains found. The community grew increasingly uneasy. Whispers spread about the strange man and his blacked-out house. Parents kept their children closer. Mike increased his patrols past the yellow house but never saw anything definitive. Once, he'd spotted Haas digging in the backyard at dusk. When Mike had shined his flashlight in that direction, Haas had simply waved and continued digging. No laws against digging on your own property. Then came the call from Lucy Townsend. Her son, 8-year-old Dylan, claimed that the skinny man from the yellow house had approached him at the edge of their property, asking if he wanted to see the special room where the noise comes from. Dylan had run home. By the time Lucy looked out the window, there was no sign of anyone. Mike drove straight to the yellow house, anger and concern overriding his usual caution. This time, Haas didn't answer his knocks. The station wagon was in the driveway, but the house remained silent. After several minutes, Mike walked the perimeter of the property, peering through gaps in the window coverings. He saw nothing but shadows. He left a business card wedged in the door with a note requesting Haas call him immediately. The call never came. 2 days later, Mike was off duty, having dinner with his wife when his phone rang. Dispatch, with a report of strange lights and noises from the yellow house. A neighbor had called it in, concerned that something might be wrong. "I'll take it," Mike said, already reaching for his jacket. The night was unusually cold for September, a thick fog rolling in from the nearby river. As Mike approached the yellow house, he noticed all the exterior lights were on, a stark change from its usual darkness. The front door stood partially open. Following protocol, Mike called for backup, then approached cautiously, hand on his holstered weapon. "Mr. Haas?" "Sheriff's Department." "Your door is open, sir." No response. Drawing his weapon, Mike pushed the door open wider with his foot. "Mr. Haas? I'm coming in to check on your welfare." The interior of the house was brightly lit but eerily silent. The newspaper clippings he'd glimpsed earlier covered every inch of the living room walls. Mike now saw they were all articles about missing persons cases and unsolved homicides from across the Midwest, spanning decades. Red string connected various clippings in a pattern that made no apparent sense. The chemical smell was stronger now, mixed with something putrid that made Mike cover his nose with his sleeve. He moved through the house room by room. The kitchen was immaculate, surfaces gleaming with what appeared to be recent cleaning. Multiple bottles of bleach and industrial-strength cleaners lined the counters. Upstairs, 2 bedrooms stood empty except for a single mattress in one, surrounded by more newspaper clippings and spiral notebooks filled with cramped, nearly illegible writing. Mike returned downstairs, noticing a door he missed, likely leading to the basement. It was secured with 3 separate padlocks, all unlocked and hanging open. "Mr. Haas?" Mike called again, knowing he'd received no answer. The basement stairs creaked under his weight. At the bottom, a single bulb illuminated a scene that would haunt Mike for the rest of his life. The basement had been divided into sections with plastic sheeting. Tables lined the walls, holding jars of unidentifiable specimens and surgical instruments arranged with obsessive precision. In the center of the room stood an old dentist's chair, modified with restraints, and surrounded by drainage channels carved into the concrete floor. And on the far wall, a massive corkboard displayed dozens of Polaroid photographs, men, women, and children, all with the same terrified expression, all photographed in this very room. But Gerald Haas wasn't there. What Mike did find was a neatly typed letter, sealed in a plastic sleeve and pinned to the center of the corkboard. Deputy Landon. * By the time you read this, I will be gone. Not dead. I don't have that kind of courage, just elsewhere. Starting over. Again, asterisk. I want you to know that I tried to stop. That's why I moved to your quaint little town. I thought perhaps the quiet might silence the noise in my head. It didn't. Asterisk. I've left you my collection. 37 souls whose disappearances remain unsolved. The notebooks contain the details, dates, locations, methods. You'll find I've been quite thorough in my documentation. Asterisk. I didn't take any of your townsfolk, though I came close with the boy. Something in his eyes reminded me of myself at that age, before I understood what I was. I'd like to think that counts for something. Asterisk. Consider this my confession. My legacy. My gift to you. Asterisk. The noise is getting louder now. Time to move on. Asterisk. Asterisk P.S. Check the freezer in the garage. I've left a surprise for you to remember me by. Asterisk. Mike radioed for additional units and a forensic team, then walked to the detached garage with a sense of dread weighing down each step. The chest freezer hummed quietly in the corner. Mike lifted the lid. Inside, neatly wrapped in butcher paper and labeled by date, were dozens of packages. One label caught his eye. Ellen Mathers, 9 of 14, curious. The general store owner hadn't been seen for 3 days. Everyone had assumed she was visiting her daughter in Chicago, as she'd mentioned doing soon. As backup arrived and the property was secured, Mike stood in the driveway, looking back at the yellow house. In the 2 months since Gerald Haas had arrived, Mike had driven past this house at least 50 times. Had greeted the man. Had sensed something wrong but done nothing decisive. How many other small towns had Haas visited? How many other local deputies had he nodded to while harboring his secrets? The forensic investigation would eventually link Gerald Haas, or whatever his real name was, to 42 murders across 7 states over a period of 25 years. The youngest victim was 7, the oldest, 73. No connection between them except that they had all crossed paths with a quiet, forgettable man who moved from town to town, leaving only the most minimal traces of his existence. Despite one of the largest manhunts in the region's history, Gerald Haas was never found. 6 months later, Mike received a postcard. No return address, postmarked from a small town in Oregon. The front showed a picturesque main street with mountains in the background. On the back, in neat, precise handwriting. Asterisk, the house is blue this time. The noise is quieter here. For now. Asterisk. Asterisk P.S. Your new deputy, the young one with the red hair, she watches my house too closely. You should tell her to be more discreet. Asterisk. Mike had never mentioned Gerald Haas to his new deputy. Had never described the case to her in detail. Yet somehow, Haas knew she'd been assigned to keep special watch on the yellow house, which remained empty, a grim reminder of what had happened there. Mike took the postcard directly to the FBI agents still consulting on the case. They added Oregon to their search grid, but deep down, Mike knew they were already too late. Somewhere, in another small town much like Pinewood, a quiet man was settling into a blue house, introducing himself to neighbors who would describe him as a bit odd but harmless. And the cycle would begin again. Because the most terrifying monsters aren't the ones that hide under beds or in closets. They're the ones that hide in plain sight, that wave hello as you drive by, that know your name and your routine and your weaknesses long before you realize you've become their next target. They're the ones that look just like everyone else, until they don't. Mike keeps the postcard in his desk drawer now. A reminder. And every morning, he drives a different route through town, eyes scanning for unfamiliar faces, for new arrivals, for the next yellow house. Or blue house. Or whatever color it might be next time. The smell hit me first, chemical and organic, like formaldehyde mixed with something sickeningly sweet. 22 years on the force, and I still wasn't used to the way some odors cling to your clothes, your hair, the back of your throat. Jesus, Malone. You said this was a routine check. My partner, Davis, pressed a handkerchief to his nose as we stepped carefully through the debris-strewn corridor of the abandoned Westlake Pharmaceutical Facility. It was supposed to be. I adjusted my flashlight, the beam cutting through dust motes suspended in the stagnant air. Anonymous tip mentioned trespassers, maybe some drug activity. Nothing about. I gestured vaguely toward the deeper recesses of the building where the smell was coming from. Westlake had shut down 7 years ago after being acquired by a larger corporation. The building had stood empty since, another monument to our town's economic decline. The city had been locked in litigation with the property owners over security and demolition costs. Meanwhile, local kids turned it into a canvas for graffiti and a venue for urban exploration. We'd been called out here a dozen times before. Usually, we'd find nothing but empty beer cans and the occasional homeless person seeking shelter. This time felt different. Our flashlight beams revealed a path cleared through the dust on the floor, multiple sets of footprints, fresh enough that the edges hadn't yet collected new debris. They led toward what had once been the research wing. Dispatch said the call came from a burner phone, Davis said, his voice slightly muffled behind the handkerchief. No name, just that we should check the third sub-level. We have a third sub-level? I'd grown up in Preston Falls, and I'd never heard of underground facilities at Westlake. Davis shrugged. Caller was specific. Said to look for the freight elevator. We found it past what had been the main laboratory, a service elevator larger than the personnel ones we'd passed earlier. The call button was dark, but beside it was a pry bar, and the doors had been forced open about 18 inches. I knelt and shined my light into the gap. The elevator car was stuck between floors, creating a narrow opening to the shaft below. A rope ladder had been secured to the elevator's floor railing and hung down into darkness. Someone really wanted to get down there, Davis muttered. Protocol said we should call for backup. Wait for a tactical team. But if someone was injured down there, the source of that smell, they might not have time. I keyed my radio. Dispatch, Officers Malone and Davis at Westlake Pharmaceuticals. We're investigating a possible break-in, proceeding to the building's lower levels. Request backup for site security. Copy that. Backup is 20 minutes out. Do you require immediate assistance? I looked at Davis, who shook his head slightly. Negative, dispatch. Just a precautionary measure. We'll maintain radio contact. Acknowledged. Be advised, your signal may degrade in the lower levels of that structure. Perfect. I holstered the radio and tested the rope ladder. It was nylon, new, and securely fastened. Someone came prepared. After you, Detective, Davis said, not entirely joking. Though we shared the same rank, I had 5 years seniority. Climbing down was awkward with a flashlight in one hand, my other hand gripping the rope tight enough to leave impressions in my palm. The shaft extended about 30 feet below, ending at what must have been the lowest level of the facility. As we descended, the smell grew stronger. By the time my feet touched the concrete floor, I could taste it, a metallic tang beneath the chemical notes. Davis landed beside me, his face pale in the harsh light of our flashlights. What the hell could they have been doing down here? He whispered. The corridor before us was different from the upper floors. No windows, no natural light, walls lined with pipes and electrical conduits. Unlike above, there was no graffiti here, no evidence of casual trespassers. But there were more footprints in the dust. And small, deliberate markings on the walls, arrows drawn in what looked like red chalk, pointing deeper into the facility. Someone wanted us to find something, I said quietly. Or someone. We followed the arrows, moving through what appeared to be storage areas and equipment rooms. Some doors were locked tight, others hung open to reveal spaces stripped bare during the facility's decommissioning. Until we reached a heavy metal door at the end of the corridor. This one bore a faded biohazard symbol and a keycard reader that no longer functioned. The door stood partially open, held that way by a wooden wedge. The smell was overwhelming now. I drew my weapon. Davis did the same. We exchanged a nod, and I pushed the door open with my foot. Beyond lay a laboratory that had somehow escaped the corporate salvage operations. Stainless steel tables, specialized equipment covered in dust, cabinets with glass fronts showing empty shelves. But it was what occupied the center of the room that drew our attention. 6 metal chairs had been arranged in a circle. In 5 of them sat shapes. Human shapes, draped in what looked like plastic sheeting. Officer Davis to dispatch, Davis said into his radio, his voice tight. We need CSI and additional units at Westlake Pharmaceuticals immediately. Possible multiple homicides. The radio returned nothing but static. I approached the circle slowly, gun still drawn, though it was clear whoever had done this was long gone. The plastic sheeting, industrial grade, heavy, had been taped meticulously around each figure, encasing them completely. Through the translucent material, I could make out the features of the closest one, a man, maybe 40, his face contorted in what might have been pain or fear. Jesus Christ, Davis whispered. What is this? The sixth chair, the only empty one, had a manila folder taped to its seat. On it, scrawled in the same red chalk as the arrows, was a single word, evidence. I carefully lifted the folder with my gloved hand. Inside were photographs and what appeared to be pages from a research journal, dated from 15 years ago. The top photo showed a group of researchers in lab coats, standing proudly in this very room. I recognized the man from the first chair, younger, smiling. The journal pages contained chemical formulas, observation notes, and trial numbers. One heading stood out. Compound D13, Human Trial Results. Davis, I said, my mouth suddenly dry. I think these people were Westlake researchers. What? That doesn't make sense. The company shut down 7 years ago. I handed him the folder. Look at the dates on those journals. These trials were never officially documented. And look at the subjects' designations. Davis's eyes widened as he read. Prisoner volunteers? I don't remember any partnership between Westlake and the state correctional system. That's because there wasn't one. At least not officially. I moved to the back of the laboratory where a glass-walled office overlooked the main space. More papers were arranged carefully on the desk inside, along with several USB drives marked security footage and a handwritten note. Detective Malone. Asterisk, they thought they destroyed everything when they shut this place down, but some of us kept copies. Some of us couldn't live with it anymore. The men in the chairs were the last surviving members of the D13 research team. They recognized me when I approached them individually over the past month. They agreed to meet here, thinking I wanted money for my silence. Asterisk. What I wanted was justice. Asterisk, the compound they developed was meant to be a non-lethal method for controlling prison populations. What it actually did was far worse. The test footage will show you everything. The subjects were told they were receiving medication to treat tuberculosis. 47 prisoners died. Hundreds more suffered effects that were never documented: neurological damage, organ failure, psychotic breaks. Asterisk. Asterisk, when prisoners began showing symptoms outside the test group, the company buried everything. The research team was reassigned, given bonuses, sworn to secrecy. The affected prisoners were transferred to psychiatric facilities with falsified diagnoses or released early with non-disclosure agreements and cash settlements. Asterisk. Asterisk, I was a security guard here during those trials. I watched those men and women suffer and die. I helped move the bodies. And I kept my mouth shut, same as everyone else. Asterisk. I can't live with it anymore. Asterisk, by the time you find this, I will have joined them. Don't look for me. Use the evidence to expose what happened here. Asterisk. Asterisk, the sixth researcher couldn't make it tonight. His name and address are in the folder. He was the lead scientist, the one who designed the compound. The one who authorized increasing dosages even after the first deaths. Asterisk. He's the one who should be sitting in that last chair. The note wasn't signed. Malone. Davis's voice pulled me from the letter. He was standing by one of the shrouded figures, peeling back a corner of the plastic. They're not dead. At least, not from any wound I can see. I moved closer. The man's skin had a grayish tinge, but there were no visible injuries, no blood. Then what? Look at his mouth. Davis pointed with his pen. A whitish residue caked the man's lips and chin. I think they all ingested something. I glanced back at the note, then at the empty chair. 6 researchers. 5 bodies. 1 address in the folder. We need to call this in again, I said. Get a signal upstairs and inform dispatch what we've found. I want the contents of this room documented exactly as we found it. Nothing touched, nothing moved. Davis nodded and headed for the rope ladder. When he was gone, I opened the folder again and found the last page, a personnel file with an address right here in Preston Falls. Dr. Andrew Mercer, Research Director. I knew the street. It was in the affluent neighborhood on the other side of town, where the executives and professionals lived in houses set back from tree-lined roads. I copied the address into my phone, then carefully return everything to exactly as we'd found it. CSI would need to document every detail before anything was removed. When Davis returned with the backup units 15 minutes later, I was waiting by the laboratory door. The scene exploded into controlled activity, photographs, evidence markers, hushed conversations as officers tried to process what they were seeing. The department captain arrived shortly after, pulling me aside for a briefing. I told him everything we'd found, showed him the note and files. Everything except the address I'd copied. Jesus, he muttered. This is going to be a jurisdictional nightmare. Corporate crimes, possible conspiracy, murders that may technically be suicides. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. The FBI will want this. So will the State Attorney General. Yes, sir. Write up everything, exactly as you found it. I want your report on my desk before you leave tonight. Yes, sir. He studied my face. You all right, Malone? You look pale. Just the smell, sir. And the scene. It's unusual. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. Go get some air. Davis can supervise until the me arrives. Outside, the night air felt impossibly clean after the stagnant miasma of the lab. I sat in my cruiser, staring at the address on my phone. Dr. Andrew Mercer. The man who should have been in the sixth chair. It was 11:47 p.m. I was due back at the station to file my report. The evidence would be processed, the investigation would proceed through proper channels. Justice would be served, eventually, through the slow grind of the legal system. If the evidence wasn't buried again. If corporate lawyers didn't find ways to delay and obfuscate. If the right people were still alive to testify. I started the engine and pulled away from the Westlake facility, away from the flashing lights and the coroner's van. The streets were nearly empty this late. It would take me approximately 12 minutes to reach Mercer's address. Another 5 to approach the house, to knock on the door. To look into the eyes of a man who had authorized experiments that killed 47 people and ruined countless more lives. Just to see him. To know his face. I turned left at the intersection, away from the route to the police station. My report would be an hour late, maybe 2. The captain would understand, given the circumstances. And Dr. Andrew Mercer, who should have been sitting in that sixth chair, would still be there tomorrow when the official investigation began. Most likely. Almost certainly. Unless, of course, he wasn't. The dashcam footage was the first thing Internal Affairs showed me. My cruiser, parked at the edge of Mercer Road, headlights illuminating the rain-slicked asphalt. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m. Everything looked normal for a routine traffic stop in the dead of night. Then my body came into frame, dragging something heavy across the road. Officer Daniels, Lieutenant Harris said, pausing the footage. Can you explain what we're seeing here? I stared at the screen, my hands trembling beneath the table. That's not possible. That's not me. Harris's expression remained impassive as he slid a file folder across the table. Inside were stills captured from the video, me, in uniform, dragging what was clearly a body wrapped in a tarp toward the drainage culvert that ran alongside Mercer Road. My face was perfectly visible, looking directly at my own dashcam. Nathan, Harris said, his voice softening slightly. He'd been my supervisor for 6 years before his promotion to Internal Affairs. We've worked together a long time. If there's an explanation, now's the time. I don't. My throat closed up. I don't remember any of this. That was 3 days ago. They've since placed me on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Surrendered my weapon, my badge. Banned me from the station. My fellow officers, people I've worked alongside for years, shared meals with, trusted with my life, now avert their eyes when they see me in town. The body in the footage hasn't been found. The culvert feeds into the Marshall River, which was running high that night due to the heavy rainfall. If there was a body, it's probably miles downstream by now. If. There's still that small word my mind clings to. If there was a body. Because I have no memory of that night. What I remember is responding to a distress call at 1:43 a.m. A stranded motorist on Route 117, about 11 miles from where my cruiser was recorded. I remember helping a woman change her tire, Karen Lowell, a nurse coming off late shift at County General. I even wrote her name in my log. But according to dispatch, that call never came in. And when investigators contacted County General, they confirmed no Karen Lowell has ever worked there. My logbook shows entries in my handwriting that I have no recollection of making. Stops that never happened, names that don't exist. And 34 minutes of missing time precisely when my dashcam shows me disposing of what appears to be a body. I've been having headaches. Violent ones that leave me nauseated and disoriented. They started about a month ago, around the same time I began finding mud on my shoes in the morning and unexplained scratches on my hands and forearms. I assumed it was stress-related. The ongoing divorce, the custody battle, the mandatory counseling sessions after the Wicker case went bad. Dr. Rahman, the department psychologist, had warned me about dissociative episodes. Your mind's way of protecting itself from trauma, she'd explained when I admitted to occasional memory gaps. Nothing major, I'd assured her. Just moments here and there where time seemed to skip like a scratched record. She never suggested I might be capable of violence during these episodes. Neither of us imagined that. Now I sit in my empty house, surrounded by case files I built for myself. Printouts of my patrol logs for the past 6 months. Calendar entries. Credit card statements. Physical evidence of where I'd been and what I'd done, trying to find the pattern, the trigger, the explanation. The headache is building again, a pressure behind my right eye that feels like someone's slowly pushing a screwdriver into my skull. My phone buzzes with a text from Harris. Me found trace blood evidence in culvert. DNA testing underway. I close my eyes and try to breathe through the pain. When I open them again, 3 hours have passed. My knuckles are bleeding. There's a hole in the drywall I don't remember making. This is what scares me most. Not the investigation or the prospect of prison. It's these gaps. These missing pieces of myself. The terrifying possibility that I've done something unforgivable and have no memory of it. I pick up my phone and call the one person who might still be willing to help me. Alex Mercer. A gruff voice answers. Mercer, my former partner, now working homicide. The only one who sent me a text after the suspension that wasn't some variation of, "How could you?" "Alex, it's Nathan. I need your help." A pause. "You shouldn't be calling me during an active IA investigation. Please. I think I'm losing my mind." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but the body they think you dumped? We found a hand this morning, washed up at Riverpoint Park. Female, middle-aged. Forensics is running prints now." The pressure in my skull intensifies. I need to know who it is. I need to know if I did this. "Nathan, where were you last Tuesday night?" The question catches me off guard. "Tuesday? Home. Why? You sure about that?" "Because your cruiser's GPS puts you out by the old Kinsler farm from 10 p.m. until almost 3 a.m. That's outside your patrol zone. Way outside. Kinsler farm. The name triggers something. A flash of splintered wood, the smell of damp earth, the sound of water dripping somewhere in darkness. I don't remember going there. I whisper. "Yeah, that's what I was afraid of." Alex's voice drops lower. "Look, I pulled some strings with me." "The hand they found?" "Preliminary examination shows the cut wasn't clean, it was chewed. Animal scavenging, most likely. But there's something else. Under the fingernails, they found soil samples with unusual mineral content. The kind only found in one place around here. Kinsler Farm." I say, the words emerging unbidden. "How did you know that?" I don't answer. I can't. The headache is blinding now, and with it comes another flash, a root cellar. Rusted farm equipment. A woman's voice pleading. I have to go. I tell Alex, and hang up before he can respond. 20 minutes later, I'm driving toward Kinsler Farm, my personal vehicle cutting through the night, windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the steady downpour. The same weather conditions as the night on the dashcam footage. Kinsler Farm has been abandoned for nearly a decade, ever since Old Man Kinsler died and his children sold the land to developers who went bankrupt before breaking ground. The main house burned down years ago, but the outbuildings remain: a barn, a silo, various sheds, all slowly being reclaimed by nature. I park on the access road and approach on foot, my flashlight cutting weak arcs through the rain. The beam catches on the barn's weathered boards, the padlocked door, the broken windows. Nothing looks disturbed. But I'm not here for the barn. Something pulls me toward the smaller structure behind it, a storm cellar, its doors lying flat against the ground, secured with a rusted chain. The chain is new. I know this somehow. The rest is old, but this chain was put here recently. I find a piece of rebar among the debris nearby and lever it against the padlock until something gives way. The doors creak open to reveal concrete steps descending into darkness. The smell that rises from below turns my stomach. Damp earth, yes, but also something else. Something rotten. I should call Alex. I should call someone. Instead, I descend the steps, my flashlight beam bouncing off wet walls streaked with mold and mineral deposits. The cellar is larger than it appears from outside, extending back beneath what was once the barn's foundation. Farm implements hang from walls: shovels, picks, rusted scythes. In the center of the dirt floor is a depression, roughly 6 feet long by 3 feet wide. My light catches on something pale protruding from the disturbed soil. A human finger. The headache explodes behind my eyes, and with it comes not darkness but terrible, blinding clarity. I remember. Not just the woman from the dashcam footage, Karen Lowell, who was not a nurse but a drifter who made the mistake of accepting a ride from a police officer, but others. 5 others over the past 8 months, their faces flashing through my mind in rapid succession. The young man walking home from a bar. The teenage girl waiting for a bus. The elderly homeless woman sheltering under the highway overpass. The college student with the broken-down car. The middle-aged jogger on the park trail at dusk. All of them vulnerable. All of them alone. All of them trusting the uniform, the badge, the veneer of authority that made me safe in their eyes. I remember bringing them here. I remember the things I did in this cellar. I remember burying them in the soft earth floor, only to dig them up again when the compulsion returned, to look at them, to talk to them, to apologize before reburying them deeper. I remember deciding Karen would be the last. That I would dispose of her differently, somewhere the bodies would never be connected to each other or to me. That's why I brought her to the culvert during my patrol, a break in routine that proved to be my undoing. The worst part isn't the memories themselves, horrific as they are. It's the realization that part of me knew all along. The gaps weren't gaps at all, but deliberate partitions, one version of myself hiding the truth from the other. I sink to my knees in the dirt, my light falling on a face half emerging from the soil. The college student, his features still recognizable despite the advancing decay. His empty eye sockets seem to stare at me accusingly. My phone vibrates in my pocket. Alex calling back? Perhaps he's traced my location. Perhaps help is already on the way. It would be easy to answer, to surrender, to let whatever broken machinery exists inside my head be someone else's problem to fix. But there's another way. A more permanent solution. My fingers brush the grip of the backup weapon strapped to my ankle, the one they didn't know to take when they suspended me. Old habits from undercover work, carrying insurance. One bullet would be enough. A single moment of clarity and courage before the darkness claims me again. I draw the gun, feeling its familiar weight. Outside, I hear the distant wail of sirens growing closer. Alex must have figured it out. The cavalry is coming, too late for my victims, but perhaps in time to stop the monster wearing my face from claiming any more. The barrel is cool against my temple. My finger tenses on the trigger. But something stops me. A whisper from that other self, the one who did these things, who hid these memories from me. They'll never find all of them. The gun lowers slightly as this new thought takes hold. The farm was just one site. There were others. Earlier ones. How long has this been happening? The headache started a month ago, but the dissociative episodes Dr. Rahman identified, those began after the Wicker case. 2 years ago. How many are there that even the other me doesn't remember anymore? The sirens are very close now. Blue and red lights flash at the edge of the property, illuminating the rain in staccato bursts. I hear car doors slamming, voices calling my name. I have a choice to make. End it now, or surrender and try to help them find the others. All of the others. My hand shakes as I lower the gun. Down here! I call out, my voice steadier than I feel. I'm down here! I set the gun on the ground and raise my hands as flashlight beams probe the darkness of the cellar. Alex's face appears at the top of the stairs, shock giving way to grim understanding as he takes in the scene before him. Jesus, Nathan! He breathes. What have you done? I look him in the eye, this man who was once my closest friend, and I tell him the only truth that matters now. I don't know yet. But I'm going to help you find out. Behind me, half buried in the soft earth floor, the victims of a man wearing my face wait silently for justice. And somewhere deep in my fractured psyche, that other self watches and waits, wondering if I'll be strong enough to expose all his secrets before he resurfaces to bury them once more. The scariest monsters aren't the ones that hide under beds or in shadows. They're the ones that hide behind badges and wedding rings and neighborhood smiles. The ones that look back from the mirror each morning, unrecognized even by themselves. Thanks so much for watching. I can't express enough how much your support means. The likes, the comments, it all really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I always take the time to read them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on any new videos. See you next time.